Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us. It is 1 o'clock, but we're going to get started in just a couple of moments. I can see people coming into the webinar from the waiting room. So thank you for joining us on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon. We will get underway shortly. For those of you who are just joining us, I want to welcome you. My computer says it's 1:02 and my phone says it's 12:59. Aren't these devices getting their information from the same place? But we will get started in just a moment. When the people at Apple tell me it's 1 o'clock, we'll get underway. So thanks for joining us. We will get underway in just a moment. Good afternoon, folks. Happy Wednesday. I am Martin Daly with the Capital District Regional Planning Commission, and welcome to today's webinar. Our session is called Your Community and the Triple Bottom Line, Ensuring Resiliency Through Neighborhood, Financial, and Environmental Health. Before we get into our program, a couple of house notes. I do want to have the opportunity to tease up a couple of programs that Capital District Regional Planning Commission is promoting. One is a technical assistance program for communities. We partner with our sister agency, Capital District Transportation Committee, and we offer an annual technical assistance program to municipalities within the 4-county capital region area of New York State. We look at land use and transportation initiatives in those communities and try to build more sustainable, robust economical places for folks. So if your community is interested in participating in this program, please check out the program at either CDRPC's website or CDTC's website. Look for more information there and contact us if you're interested in applying. Also, we're not just talking about great plans, but we're celebrating the people behind them. We have our Erastus Corning II Awards for Intermunicipal Cooperation. That awards program is open now and accepting applications. So if there is an individual in your community you wish to recognize, or a team of individuals working to implement a plan or program or develop a plan or program, or there is a plan and program you specifically want to shine the spotlight on. Sometimes we don't pat ourselves on the back enough for the great work we're doing in our communities, and this is an opportunity to do just that. So folks, find information about this program on our website, cdrpc.org. The only other housekeeping items I have are our attendees join with video and security off, video and microphones off, so we can try to keep on track here for our webinar series. But if you'd like to submit questions and comments on the webinar as we go, please do so. Use that chat function or the Q&A function, and I will refer them to our speaker through those measures. We do archive the recordings on the Eventbrite page. So if you miss something or you want more information, you want to come back to a portion of this webinar, please come back to the Eventbrite page and you can find a video archive of the presentation that will be posted there later today. For folks seeking AICP credits, this has been submitted for AICP credits, and there is an AICP credit number attached. You can find that number on our page, or you can search for the terms of this webinar in the APA website. You'll be able to locate this webinar to log your credit. And finally, for those of you who are using a webinar like this for your 4 hours of planning and zoning annual training, you can submit the email that we'll send out 24 hours after the conclusion of this webinar to your municipality for consideration of credit. You'd think I'd never been through this before. I have my laundry list of things I have to say at the beginning to make sure everyone knows how the program works and to be able to answer the frequently asked questions. So now that we're done with that, I can get back to the exciting stuff. We are really fortunate to have Matt Horn of the MRB Group here today. MRB Group has been such a great supporter of our webinar series. They're not supporting just one, but they're actually supporting 2 series and bringing their talent to the forefront to be able to share with us the work they've been doing throughout New York State and the Northeast. So I'm really excited to have them aboard. Today's webinar is about creating thriving communities, and that means recognizing interconnections and dependencies. This session will explore the strong relationship between engaged residents, a vibrant local economy, and environmental sustainability, what Matt's referring to as the triple bottom line, as well as how community leaders can help create powerful networks to foster communication that will support long-term resiliency. So no sacrifices approach that Matt is going to be providing with us, discussing with us today. So I really want to thank Matt for taking time this afternoon to present to us this afternoon, and I will hand it over to him.
All right, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity, and thanks to the RPC for your commitment to continuing to develop the planning and zoning professionals and community development professionals in the region. And thanks also to everyone who's attending today. Your own personal commitment to your continued development is going to benefit your communities tremendously. A little background on me. I am the Director of Local Government Services for MRB Group. MRB Group is a multidisciplinary local government services firm. We support communities around New York State and in a couple of other locations around the country, really trying to just take communities to the next level, whatever their challenges may be. And we spend a lot of time in the community development space. And one of our just kind of, again, or kind of deal breaker positions is this concept of values-driven leadership. And triple bottom line, which we'll talk about today, is reflective of values that we see in a lot of communities. It seems like these three pieces that were just overviewed, this neighborhood health, or social health, financial health, and environmental health seem to capture the value sets of a lot of different communities. But if you walk away from today with only one thing, what I'm hoping that you'll take away with you is that whatever your values are, whatever you arrive at in terms of core values for your community, that you let those serve as your guide when making decisions. So hopefully you'll feel some alignment in the triple bottom line. But if you don't, then definitely just think about this values-driven framework as a way you can be making decisions. So we'll get started here. So I travel a lot. I've been working in local government for about 20 years. Worked around the Southeast originally for a big chunk of those years, and then spent about 10 years as the city manager of Geneva out in the Finger Lakes, a great little community. Since my time in Geneva, I've moved over into a consulting role, which has enabled me to work with dozens and dozens more communities. And it amazes me the commonality in language. So when I ask a mayor, a manager, a planning director, a planning board member, what are you after? What is it that you want to see in your community? They almost always move to the term quality of life, right? It seems to be a catch-all for lots of different things. So when you talk to your own constituents, when you talk to the residents in your community, to applicants for projects, they talk about being drawn to your community's quality of life. We do a ton of comprehensive planning. It's my favorite thing to work on. And I spend the biggest chunk of time in a comprehensive plan trying to drill down to what makes this community so special. And when I ask a comprehensive plan steering committee or mayors or staff or any of those folks who are helping us to shape the comprehensive plan, what do you love about your community? They say quality of life. And they might say it in a couple of different ways: small town feel, right? Urban vibrancy. But what they're really speaking about is this sense or feeling that they get when they're at home, when they're in their hometown. And what I've come to characterize this as is just, it's intrinsic to their values. They're talking about the things that they value in their own personal lives. They're talking about shared values that they have with their neighbors and their constituents, things that resonate with them personally, that keep them in their communities. If you think about yourself and your family, your friends, in the 21st century, we're all pretty mobile, right? There are vast opportunities for us to live and work virtually anywhere in the world. And when I'm talking to a community about their comprehensive plan, about their vision, their values, I talk to them about being a community of choice, and the difference between a community of choice and a community of circumstance. A community of choice is a place where, as a person who's mobile, you're free to move around. You've determined that this is the place I want to stay and grow personally, raise a family, versus, well, I have to be here because I'm caring for a family member. But as soon as that family member's well, or if the worst happens and that family member passes, I'm out of here, right? That's a community of circumstance. That's a community of where people feel stuck. So when we're talking to communities about becoming a community of choice, we talk about becoming a community of choice for residents and neighbors who share our value set. And when I really drill at that, when I really ask communities about their values, some common things come to the surface, some common themes emerge. They talk about strong, healthy households. And this can come in a variety of flavors, right? If you're from a more urban setting, a more urban area, then they talk about neighborhoods and the diversity of housing types within neighborhoods. If you're in more of a rural area or an agrarian area, agricultural driven area, you're still thinking about healthy residents and housing that can support that, a diversity of housing that suits the people that you want to see living in your community. So housing always bubbles up as a big one in neighborhoods. An inventory of public amenities that differentiate you from your neighboring communities. Things like parks and schools and public spaces that serve as kind of an imprint in your community, a signal to the market, if you will, about what your community is all about, how you invest your public resources. They talk about economic opportunity. Can people who live in this community make a living here, right? Are there jobs? Are there industrial, commercial, and retail opportunities that kind of keep the wheels spinning, if you will, economically. And so people talk about that as a desirable attribute of their community. And then what really makes all of this spin are ample revenues. You talk to mayors and decision makers in communities, and they talk a lot about, we need revenue to make all of this happen. And this sounds really intuitive, right? This sounds like exactly how every community should work. These things are what's critical to nearly every community that's out there. And several years ago, I was working with a mayor out in the Finger Lakes, and he characterized the connectivity between these attributes as something that he called the virtuous cycle. And what he means by virtuous cycle is the idea that all of those things I just described play into one another and influence one another. And he focused kind of left to right here, but in reality, any of these things will spur movement in the next thing and the next thing. But the thing that he saw as having the most control over in his community was how he was investing, or how his board of trustees was investing in public amenities. He felt like if we invest heavily in our park system, if our school district is managed well, if our infrastructure is holding up and is able to provide capacity for growth, then that creates a signal to the market. It inspires confidence in your market. When you've got market confidence, when investors look at your community and they feel like they can generate a return in your community, then they tend to invest in those things that we just talked about. They invest in economic opportunities, whether it's retail, commercial, industrial investments. Those types of things, as well as direct residential investment, help to create these strong, healthy neighborhoods. So when you have confidence in the market, you're going to see a better collection of strong, healthy households, of strong, healthy neighborhoods. When you got economic confidence in the market and you got strong, healthy neighborhoods, you're just naturally going to generate new local revenues, right? New rooftops, new Main Street businesses, new industrial projects in your community lead to local revenue increases, whether it's property tax, sales tax, permit fees, any of the things that you're used to seeing. So now you've got these new revenues, which enables you to go back and to reinvest in public amenities, right? So you can see how this churn starts to happen, this virtuous cycle that the mayor out in the Finger Lakes referred to. If you're investing in the right things, if you're investing in the right way, then that wheel is just going to keep on churning, and you're going to continue to see confidence in the market, strong, healthy neighborhoods, and better public amenities. But one of the things that I think is critical to understand is that you're not just looking for any market confidence, right? The one box that I just mentioned, or the one box that gets checked that I just mentioned relative to confidence in your market, the nature of the free market is that if I can earn $1.01 for every $1 I put in to a venture, then it's worth it, right? It's worth it for me to invest because I can generate a return. So that's a box that has to be checked just by virtue of natural economics. The box that you want checked, though, is you want an investor who shares your value set, right? Because that's going to attract additional investors, additional market confidence by people who share your value set. And so we've all seen commercial projects, and I can think of a half dozen right now brand names of store retail ventures or types of economic development projects that are going to generate revenue, no question. But that may or may not align with your particular value set. And you can picture a retail space now that may be located in your community that just doesn't click with you, that you might wish wasn't there. And that's an economic opportunity that generated a return, but did not necessarily align with your value set. So how do we make that happen? How do we get both of those boxes checked? The ability to generate economic return and alignment with our values. One of my favorite planning phrases is, great communities don't happen by accident, right? You have to be intentional about the way you want to develop. You have to be intentional about the way you want to grow. You signal to your market, you signal to the market what your intentions are by the investments that you make as a local government. If you're investing in infrastructure, if you're investing in schools, if you're investing in public spaces, that sends a signal to the market. If you're creating quality of life policies, that is a signal to the market. A developer can typically look at your zoning code and decide what you value, right? But if you're not intentional about it, if you're the opposite of an intentional community would be a haphazard community, right? An issue bubbles up and you write a law to deal with that issue. You write a regulation to deal with that issue. Without being intentional about it, being thoughtful about it, engaging in any kind of foresight. The other thing that happens, particularly in comprehensive planning.
Matt, I don't want to jump on you when you're
Sure.
you're on a roll. I saw you had some great slides earlier, but you're not sharing your screen now. And so when I took over, I jumped off yours. So your screen isn't up.
Wonder what happened there.
Sorry, I should have let you know. I should have let you know earlier, but I'm like, he's just rolling with this introduction. He's great. He doesn't need the PowerPoint.
Oh man, well, you're definitely going to want to see some of those slides. Let me pull that back.
And what I'll do is I'll supplement the archive to be able to include the copy of the presentation as well.
Oh,
but
great.
You captivated us knowing this material. So he's just going into it. I just thought I'd jump in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for catching that. So this is the illustration of that virtuous cycle, right? And so hopefully this captures your imagination much more than just my narrative overview of it. But you can see how this churn happens, right? You can see that where local government can most often influence the kickstart of this cycle is on the public amenity side. And then you can see how that cycle just starts to spin, how the wheel starts to grind. And so this slide by itself should give you a picture of how community development can work in your favor. So when we talk about intentional planning, when we talk about the opposite of haphazard planning, I've been, early in my career, I was exposed to lots of different comprehensive plans, as many of you are as well. Particularly if you're a professional planner or someone who's gone through any kind of professional planning training, you've probably been exposed to how any various comprehensive planning works. What I find to be the least valuable exercise in comprehensive planning is just brainstorming lists of projects. And what I tell communities a lot is when we develop a comprehensive plan, we almost never create this 20-year list, this 20-year capital improvement plan, or a 20-year list of economic development projects you should chase. Because depending upon how long you've been in this business or how long you've been doing this work, I've personally have been doing it about 20 years. And if I think back to where community development was 20 years ago, or if I think back to the communities I was working in 20 years ago, what they looked like then, what the universe of possibilities was for them then versus what is inherent in our day-to-day life today. Any 20-year list I could have made back when I kickstarted my career, years probably 9, 10 up through 20 would have been completely irrelevant, right? As it relates to really specific projects. And so what I like to do with communities today is spend a big chunk of time talking about vision and values. And so if we're going to engage in values-driven planning, your comprehensive plan becomes much more of a filter, right, than a list. And so if you've got a strong vision and a strong, clear set of community values or core values, planning principles, then you don't have to anticipate every project that's going to come along, every investment opportunity, every economic development proposal that's going to come before you, every planning board application that's going to show up. Doesn't have to be anticipated, because you're going to use that same filter. You're going to use that vision and say, how is this project advancing us toward our vision? How is this investment proposal advancing us toward our vision? And how does it score in alignment with our core values? So I spend a ton of time on the front end of a comprehensive plan, helping a community to create a unified vision. 15 years from today, if we do everything right as a community, what will this community look like? That's a unified vision statement, something that you can be working toward. A shared set of values or planning principles. How are we going to get there? If a project comes to us, what boxes does it need to check to signal to us that it's advancing us toward our vision? And then lastly, a commitment as community leaders to say, we are going to live by these values. We are going to work toward this vision. We say the vision shouldn't change at all inside of your comprehensive plan horizon, right? That vision is that stake out on the horizon that we're walking toward and that we're going after. So there shouldn't be a lot of movement there. Your values probably should hold steady over an even longer period of time. And so a local government needs a commitment by its planning board, zoning board, staff, city council, town board, village board of trustees. Those are the folks who need to put their hand on the document and say, we're behind this set of values, and we're going to lead from behind these values. So around the time I was working on my last comprehensive plan as a city manager, I stumbled across this author, Simon Sinek. And Simon Sinek has a book out there. He's got a couple of them out there, but one of his books is Start with Why. And we were going through this visioning process as a community, and I came across Start with Why. And if you're a TED Talk person or YouTube person, you should Google this and find the Simon Sinek Start with Why TED Talk, because I'm not going to be able to do it any justice inside of this little capsule here. But during that visioning process, as I read Start with Why, the golden circle is the root element of Start with Why. And what Sinek tells us is, on that outer ring there, every organization, and we'll use communities as an example now. So if you're working for a town today as a planning board member, zoning board member, or town planner, you know what it is you're here to do. I'm here to review development plans. I'm here to make sure that the projects that come before me align with development regulations, align with zoning, align with the comprehensive plan. That's what I'm here to do. Everybody should do that. I used to say everybody knows what they're supposed to do, but I've managed for long enough that I do know there's still a few clueless folks out there who don't even know what they're here to do. But let's say the vast majority of folks understand what it is they're here to do. How? Some of the very best organizations out there have a clear understanding of how they're going to do it. That how is that set of core values, market differentiators, right? That set you apart from other places, that ensure that you're not developing out as any town USA. That is the how is the guidepost for getting us toward our vision. The very, very best, the greatest organizations out there, the 1% communities out there, know why they're supposed to, why they're here. Why are we coming to the table every day? Why are we coming to town hall every day? that most closely aligns with our vision. You might think of it as purpose. You might think of it as vision. Our why in planning is most often to drive our community toward our unified vision. What Sinek also says is you have to start with what the name of the book is, Start with Why. And so what he encourages organizations to do is don't think about what you're going to do or even how you're going to do it until you understand why you're here. So that's why we spend a ton of time on the front end working on vision, then values, then projects. And Sinek talks about it as biological. So you on the right of your screen there, you'll see if you shaved the top of your skull off and looked right down at your brain, you would be looking at something that resembles the right set of circles over here. That limbic brain, sometimes we call it the lizard brain. It's like the million, 2 million, 5 million year old earliest version of the human brain. The limbic brain is responsible for emotion. It's not capable of speech, so it's not capable of any vocabulary. It's what we most commonly refer to as our gut or our heart. When we talk about I just acted from the gut or I acted from the heart, we're talking about acting from the limbic brain. And then as humans evolved, as we got older as a species, our neocortex developed, and that's what translated those limbic impulses into muscle movement, vocabulary, and all of kind of the modern advances of human activity. And so the limbic brain and the why circle line up perfectly. And so what I talk about a lot is probably everybody on this call, you'll say, I love my mother, I love my sister, my brother, my husband, my wife. But if I asked everybody on this call to write the definition of love, I'd get 40 different definitions, right? Similarly, in community development, you'll think of this as, well, I'm looking at a plan here. I see it meets all the zoning regulations, but man, that's not colony. That's not the colony way. We can't, it would be impossible. Our zoning code would be, this thick. It's already this thick. It could be 5 times this thick if we try to codify what colony really is. But we know it when we see it, right? We know when a building goes up, hey, that looks like colony versus another building that doesn't. That's your limbic brain. That's your limbic existence telling you, I connect with this or I don't connect with this. And when you're creating a vision, when you're creating values, what you're trying to do is connect that limbic impulse with an outward expression, with how we're going to behave as a community. And this is critical. Back to that confidence in the market piece, right? We said we wanted 2 boxes checked. One, they have to be able to generate an economic return. They're not going to come to the table if they don't. So you're going to get a whole population of people who feel like they can generate an economic return in your community with a whole big basket of different products. What you want is somebody whose why is connected to your why, whose limbic impulse is connected to your limbic impulse, so that when they build that building or they generate that economic activity, it is your community, it's your hometown, it feels right. So when we're talking about starting with why, we talk about on the vision side of things, clarity of vision. We want to be as clear as we can possibly be, because this is the thing we want people to connect with. We want people to connect with our why. And so we need clarity around why. When we have our core values developed out, we need to be disciplined around core values. If we say environmental sustainability is a core value, and then 2 days later, someone says, I've got a great project for you. We're going to invest $10 million in a garbage incinerator. You have to make a call whether a garbage incinerator and environmental sustainability line up in your heart. If you decide that they don't and you allow it to happen anyway, then you've confused the market. So we need discipline around how, and then consistency in what. The planning board is going to review this against zoning criteria, and we're going to do it on a consistent basis. We're not going to change the zoning every time a project comes by that we like or we don't like. It doesn't have to be a static document. It can evolve, but it doesn't evolve based on what's in front of us every single meeting. We're going to be consistent about the what, about what it is we're doing every day. The reason why we want to focus on this limbic impulse, this limbic response, is because Simon Sinek encapsulates it perfectly in this sentence. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right? So if you invest, if I get back to the environmental sustainability piece, if we say we need revenue for parks because we're a parks community, because we're an environmentally sensitive community, we believe in protecting parks and open space. And then you enable, and you can make your own decisions about what you, I'll pick on landfills today just to have something to pick on. You generate the revenue you need for a great park system by allowing a twofold expansion of your landfill. You're confusing the market, right? The market is saying, you're telling the market, we believe in parks and open space and environmental preservation, but you're showing the market that you'll do anything that you need to do to get revenue, right? And so people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. You can have the most incredible park system in the world, but if you funded it with something untoward or from an environmental standpoint, then the environmental folks are just going to drive right by your community. So people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So that's the values-driven decision-making piece of this, right? So what I said at the beginning was, if triple bottom line doesn't ring your bell, if environmental, social, financial sustainability is something that you think is cool sounding, but it just isn't hitting that limbic response for you, at least walk away with that golden circle, that start with why mentality. And rework your comprehensive plan to work inside out, to start with the vision and develop a strong set of values before you start developing an action set, right? But for me, again, kind of in that same time frame, it was a really fun time for me to be working on a comprehensive plan. We had just started on our comprehensive plan. I read Start With Why. It really rang my bells. And then right as our comprehensive plan was wrapping up, I went to a Department of State presentation on the triple bottom line. And the title kind of drew me in, but the presenter was someone there whose what I absolutely resonated with. The presenter was the director of operations for Genesee Brewing. So his what was producing Genesee beer, Jenny Light, Labatt, and he was, it's the oldest brewery in New York State. And I said, I can get on board with beer. So I went to listen.
About Jenny Cream Ale is going to get your attention.
So I went to listen to the beer guy's presentation because right away his what drew me in. So for those of you who are familiar with Jenny Light, Jenny Cream Ale, then this will be second hat or old hat to you, but for the rest of us, Genesee Brewing is one of the oldest breweries in North America, the oldest brewery in New York State. It sits right in downtown Rochester. It's a staple. It's a brand everybody knows, and it's definitely a Rochester and a Finger Lakes brand. People are proud of it and drawn to it. In the 1980s and 90s, just like the rest of industry, particularly in the Northeast and New York State, Genesee started struggling. They went through a few reinventions, changed the name of the brewery, got into developing some new product lines. In other words, they monkeyed around a lot with their what, and just couldn't get it figured out. And in all honesty, financially, they started to wobble. And ultimately, they were purchased by a company from Costa Rica. In 2013, FIFCO acquired the brewery, acquired the brand, and a couple of other brands in North America, rebranded as North American Breweries, and that included folks like Genesee and Labatt and others, and then brought in their management philosophy. So you can imagine in Costa Rica and Central America, there's an incredible focus around the environment. So FIFCO controlled their original production was ice. They manufactured something like 85% of all of the manufactured ice in Costa Rica. In terms of bottled water and juices and other things, they manufactured or produced, packaged 75% of all bottled beverages in the country. This one firm did. So what they knew was to continue to produce great ice, to continue to produce these bottled beverages, water and the environment was going to be critical. They needed to commit themselves to preserving the environment. Additionally, they knew if we're going to be a major producer, we got to have an incredible workforce, and we're going to have an incredible customer base. The way we're gonna ensure that is we're going to invest in communities. We're going to make sure that with everything we do, we strengthen the communities that our workers live in and that our customers live in. And ultimately, what panned out was environmental preservation, environmental stewardship, and social cohesion. Time and again, produced better profits over and over and over again. So what FIFCO found when they came to Rochester and came to Genesee Brewing was that the folks at Genesee Brewing were doing what I was doing when I first came to the Finger Lakes. I live on Seneca Lake. We call it the bottomless lake. Its deepest measured depth is around 800 feet and counting. And so we say we've got limitless water resources. And I was coming from an area of the country that did not, that was wondering how we were going to sustain development with water. But after spending only a few months in the leadership or a few years in the leadership in Geneva, I recognized how precarious that water was. There's a lot of it there, but how productive it can be really depends on us and our environmental philosophy. And FIFCO found the same thing in Genesee Brewing. Nobody was paying attention to how much water they were using. The output, the waste output that was going back into the city of Rochester's sewer system was high strength waste. It was causing lots of havoc in the regional watershed. FIFCO immediately came in and set a new tone. We're going to conserve water. We're going to treat water and produce effluent even that won't cause trouble in the system. Genesee Brewing itself was in the middle of a transitional neighborhood, an economically challenged neighborhood. FIFCO pumped resources and efforts into strengthening the neighborhood that surrounded the brewery in the hopes of drawing workforce from right there, from close by, and ensuring that this creates a customer base for the firm. And then based on those two principles alone, they immediately started to see a turnaround in Genesee Brewing and North American Breweries profits. And as a result, they continued that triple bottom line philosophy moving forward. So I walked away from that presentation really energized about the idea of people, planet, profit. It made a lot of sense to me. And it started to really take me back to the city's comprehensive plan. And I started to try and determine, is this a management model for how we're gonna get our comprehensive plan executed? And so in the triple bottom line model, if you've only got environmental and social stewardship, it's viable. It's what they call viable. If you've only got environmental and financial stewardship, it's what they call bearable. And if you've only got financial and social, it's what they call equitable. Viable, bearable, equitable. I mean, bearable doesn't quite inspire confidence, right? But viable and equitable make you feel good about what's happening. So either of those areas or any of those three areas is a place you'd probably be comfortable living for a period of time. But truly sustainable in the triple bottom line model means checking all three of those boxes: environmental, social, and financial. And so I came back and I started really turning wrenches on the comprehensive plan implementation model to say, how do we create an implementation framework that rolls this concept forward? And so I got in front of my city council. I'm telling my beer story. They were a little bit horrified to learn I've been hanging out at Genesee Brewing for some of the workday. And I forgot to mention, I actually took my management team, grabbed my planning director, my finance director, and some other folks, took them out to the Genesee Brewing plant, met with the CEO of North American Breweries, and they really lived that brand. They welcomed us in. The CEO of North American Breweries walked us around the plant, helped us understand what they were doing, because he saw that as his social responsibility to replicate this model in the Finger Lakes and make sure that communities could live the brand as well. We then brought him in. He came to a full-day management retreat so that he could help us take our comprehensive plan and overlay a triple bottom line management model. So when I went to my city council and shared with them all this excitement, the first thing out of their mouths was, "Well, that's business. Local government is different." And I was able, because we had committed to this investigation, to say, no, we're not different. We're not different at all. Our operations, our constituents, our traditional neighborhood behavior, we have a heavy impact on our environment. As a local government, we're responsible for creating social cohesion in the community. And there's no question that city councils, town boards, village boards are sometimes incessantly focused on the financial sustainability of our operations, appropriately so. We're stewards of the public dollar. And so what TBL, triple bottom line, did for us was to bring kind of a consistent decision-making model. We took that comprehensive plan and turned it into a model for how we determined financial allocations, how we determined operational approaches to things, and how we did economic development. And so it created an easy decision-making model for when someone came to us and said, "I think we should put $20,000 into this project or that project." We were able to quickly look at the triple bottom line model and say, is it economically, socially, and financially sustainable? We'll get into that in a moment. It became a clear expression of our values to the market. And if you have time, I would encourage you to go search for the Geneva comprehensive plan. The Geneva, it calls itself, on the cover page, it calls itself a decision-making framework. And right up front, it says, these are our values. And so whenever I had a developer say, how do we move a project forward? I just hand them that set of values and say, can you really live within this framework? And then it communicates to residents how we're going to make these decisions. And so there's never a question of, well, that was Matt's buddy, that's why he got that $5,000, or that's the mayor's golf partner, that's why they're investing in that particular project. No, it had to be justified under the triple bottom line model. So local governments aren't different. On the environmental side, we treat wastewater. We're responsible for the health of that bottomless lake out there. We generate a ton as a community. We generate tons of solid waste. And we're responsible for managing building and development in our community in such a way that's going to sustain us both environmentally, socially, and financially into the future. On the social side, we have a planning department. We have a community development objective that results in great neighborhoods, great community programs. We have a public safety mission, and that public safety mission is oriented toward creating safe, healthy spaces for our residents to live in. So we're absolutely involved routinely on the social side. And then financial, again, I felt like as a city manager, I lived most of my days in that financial stewardship mode, developing a great budget, managing to that budget, creating economic opportunity for our residents, attracting investment in housing. And so very quickly, we were able to shake out direct, easy. This falls right in the financial box, right in the environmental box, right in the social box. And then to challenge department heads and challenge people in the community who were making investment proposals, resource proposals, challenge them to move it up from the financial model and try to check some additional boxes as well. So it serves as a prioritization effort, right? If it lands squarely in that triple overlap there, that triple bottom line overlap, if you can show me we're advancing an environmental piece of our program, we're enhancing the social fabric of our community, and we'll see a return financially on that investment, you're in. That we call it that's a priority project. We're going to work to make that happen as quickly and effectively as we can. If it's in that bearable, livable, equitable overlap, we're still going to put a strong effort into it. We're going to work as hard as we can to say, how do we make this more if it's strong financially and it's strong on the social side, how do we make it more environmentally sustainable? How do we make it more, how do we enhance our built environment around it? Or if it's financially and environmentally sustainable, but it's not doing a lot for our neighborhoods, is there a way to create a wrinkle in there that's going to support our neighborhoods so that we move it from this two-step overlap up into this middle piece here? But you still put a ton of effort into projects like that. If it's only checking one of these boxes, if it's really only a social program, and try as we might, we can't make it super financially sustainable, or it doesn't advance an environmental piece, we might still put some effort into it, but it's going to be relatively modest effort if you can't make that case, the case for us and to check two or more boxes. And if it's outside of all three of those boxes, if you can't show me it's going to be environmentally sustainable, you can't show me that there's going to be a social cohesion piece, and if it's just us writing a check, I call that statutory effort. That basically means if the state says I got to do it, I guess I got to do it. If the feds say we got to do it, I guess we got to do it. Otherwise, we're not going to put any effort into that. So then it comes down to assessing the impact, right? So as these projects come in, we have to be able to say, how is this checking? How are these boxes being checked? And so what we did was to design a really basic scoring criteria. One rule in triple bottom line that we put on the table at the beginning: if it causes damage to any of those three spheres, if it's going to be environmentally damaging, if it's going to rough up the social fabric of the community, if it's going to be very expensive and not yield some other return, then it doesn't even get to the table, right? It doesn't necessarily have to advance all three of these, but it can't do any harm to any of the three of these, right? So under that basic scoring criteria, you get 0 points if you can't prove impact in a given sphere. So you might get 0 environmental points. What that means is nobody was able to explain to me how this is going to be enhancing our environment in some way. If you can demonstrate a minor impact to one or more of the spheres, minor positive impact, we might give you a point. If you demonstrate a significant impact in any of the three spheres, we'll give you 2 points. And I'll show you this in a rubric in just a moment. And so we encouraged folks. We provided that value set to developers, to nonprofits in the community who wanted resources, to staff, leadership who wanted to contribute to budgets, and said, hey, score it. You score it for us. Tell us why you think this is a 2 across the board or a 1 across the board versus having some gaps. And they would bring in their scores. We wouldn't take them at face value. We'd poke at them a little bit, but at least they were making the case that this deserves some attention. And so I think about LED street lighting as a project that came along after our comprehensive plan was adopted. On the environmental side, LED street lighting showed a very significant reduction in power requirements. And our old, cruddy halide street lights were drawing a ton of power. So you got 2 points right out of the gate on the environmental side. Socially, we said, hey, if we can create more reliability of street lighting, we can create better, more focused light. Neighborhoods are going to be more attractive. They're going to be a little bit safer. So that enhanced reliability brings us one point on the social side. Financially, the cost savings from LED streetlights generated all of the money we needed to invest in the streetlights themselves. And so we gave it 2 full points. So when you ran it out, it scored a 1.7 roughly out of 2. That says, make this project move, get this project rolling forward, because it really is living in that centerpiece. This is a local government operations example, but you can think right off the top of your head about a development proposal that's going to come before you. How is it advancing our environmental stewardship goals? How is it contributing to neighborhood cohesion? And how will it support city operations, town operations, village operations? How do you use it? How did we use it? We used it always during budgeting. When staff came in and wanted to add additional staff people, add additional programs, create new infrastructure, we had them score it in that triple bottom line rubric. Even for council, city council, town board meetings, we would say to ourselves, does this warrant getting in front of council? I mean, is this worth council spending some of their time debating this? It's going to negatively affect the environment, or it's not going to create any kind of positive impact in 2 of the 3 spheres. We might let council know about it, but we probably aren't going to spend a ton of time on a council agenda making this thing work. And then similarly, when we were hiring staff, back to the limbic response and aligning our values with our staff values, when we hired staff, we talked to our potential new staff people about our values, about the triple bottom line, and how much we valued those elements. When we did performance evaluations on existing staff, I would score the staff's activity and around how their department was performing on the environmental side, how the department was performing on social cohesion, and how they were doing financially. So, I would say again, we said this at the beginning, if you take nothing else away from this, print out a copy of that golden circle and sit down with your local leadership and ask the why questions first, right? Why are we here? What's our vision as a community moving forward? What are we aiming for? What's our purpose? And then what are the values that we share that get us there? And then finally, what actions should we be taking? How do we change our operations? If you love the triple bottom line, great. Hope you'll adopt it. If you don't, at least adopt that values definition model. Once you have a vision in place, broadcast it as far as you can broadcast it, because you want to connect with developers in your region, or developers who are checking out your community, investors. You want to connect them with that value set and with that vision. You want them believing what you believe. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. We ought to throw up at the beginning. I get a lot of flack for adding this qualifier, but I say the right people. We talk about benevolent developers to the degree that they exist. The benevolent developer is the one who's doing it for the right reason, and that is that he shares your value set. And then look at your existing operations. Look at your existing, if you're on the planning board today, are you as a board able to act in alignment with your community's vision and values? Do you even know what they are? Has the town leadership or village leadership shared that with you, so that you can make sure that the decisions you're making, the operations that you're engaged in on the development review side, are advancing you toward that vision, or advancing you in alignment with those values. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I soaked up a whole big chunk of time here, so I know we don't have a ton of time left over, but I am happy to answer any questions that came up along the way.
Yeah, no, I love the opportunity to go through this. I'm on the Board of Zoning Appeals for my city. And so when I think about how your kind of scoring system for the triple bottom line and how you're measuring the social, economic, and community impacts, environmental impacts, I think back to the state's 5-part test. Right, the courts have reinforced that 5-part test on a particular variance's impact upon a community in regards to the environment and the character of the community, and what kind of economic factors need to be balanced out between the weight on the applicant and the weight on other properties around the applicant seeking the variance. So
Seeker too. Seeker has a really strong triple bottom line alignment.
Yeah, there's already these baked in tests and weights into defensible decisions that communities make when they're looking at evaluating a site plan or a development proposal or a variance. So I think structuring that from the why is a real critical importance, especially to planning and zoning board members who may sometimes get lost in the black and white of things. So I appreciate that perspective, and certainly any presentation which is going to, over the course, cut a brain in half and look at how you're thinking about these decisions and to talk about breweries as well. So
Yeah.
I do really appreciate the opportunity to have you come share with us today. I really like this way of structuring, thinking about decisions and developing performance metrics. It's a really creative way to start addressing community impacts for particular projects. So Matt, you've got your information there on the screen. We'll certainly archive the presentation as a video. If you want to send me your presentation as a PDF afterwards, I'll make sure that gets archived as well so people can go through it, because there's a lot of thoughtful stuff in here, and I really appreciate that. And again, thanks to the MRB group for supporting us. It dovetails nicely into, here's my shameless plug, it dovetails nicely into next week's session, speaker sponsor Bergman, when we talk about controversial land use. So all the torches and pitchforks that you may feel are coming out to a particular development proposal, and the friction from the community over development in your community is going to be front and center. So I feel like we have a good balance here. If you will, pardon the pun, of talking about how to think through some of these decisions, and local case studies next week of projects that were controversial in navigating certain minefields. So again, Matt, I really appreciate your time. I love the thoughtfulness you put together on this and the way that you've structured the ways that communities can think about development in their community and planning in their community and how it impacts their constituents. So
thank you. Really enjoyed it. And again, appreciate the effort that your organization puts into developing folks out.
Happy to present it. We couldn't do without you. That's literal and figurative. So, all right, with that, I'm going to close things out. Thank you so much for everybody who attended. Please reach out if you have questions, and we'll look forward to seeing you on Friday. Bye-bye.